Hello, and welcome to today's virtual town hall with State Attorneys General, brought to you by the American Constitution Society, a 501c3 nonpartisan nonprofit organization. ACS is the nation's foremost progressive legal organization with a diverse nationwide network that includes over 200 student and lawyer chapters. Our members are progressive lawyers, students, judges, scholars, elected officials, and advocates. ACS's mission is to support and advocate for laws and legal systems that redress our founding failures of our Constitution, strengthen our democratic legitimacy, uphold the rule of law, and realize the promise of equality for all, including people of color, women, LGBTQ plus people, people with disabilities, and other historically excluded communities. I'm Valerie Nannery. In my role as Senior Director of Policy and Program at ACS, I direct the State Attorneys General Project. Since 2017, the State AG Project has developed and disseminated legal resources and hosted programming and events like this, examining the actions of state attorneys general and the emerging policy and legal issues they face. The State AG Project also highlights opportunities for law students and attorneys to advance their careers in public service in state AG offices. As state's chief legal officers, state attorneys general are first and foremost law enforcement officials sworn to uphold the U.S. and state constitutions and to enforce state and federal laws. The heart of a state attorney general's mission is to serve the public interest. With broad jurisdiction and independence to act, state AGs play a crucial role in upholding the rule of law and protecting the rights, health, and safety of their state's residents. And we are thrilled that 4 of these leaders have joined us today to discuss just that. Each of these leaders has an extensive resume that I will not attempt to lay out here. We have provided links to their extensive and impressive bios. We want to get straight into today's forum, but before we do, I have a few housekeeping notes for you. Today's event is being recorded, and the recording will be available on ACS's website at acslaw.org, our YouTube channel, and it will be used for a future episode of the ACS podcast, Broken Law. Second, a few members of the audience will have the opportunity to speak directly to the attorneys general. If you are selected to speak with the AGs, when we invite you up, please turn on your camera and unmute when you are asked to do so. We ask that you limit your stories and questions to 1 or 2 minutes, and we will cut you off if necessary to keep the program moving. Finally, we may have time to take additional questions, so if you have a question that you would like the AGs to answer, you can type it into the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen at any time. We will try to get to as many questions as possible. Without further delay, I am thrilled to welcome our special guests in alphabetical order by state, because there's any number of ways to introduce these wonderful people. From the state of Arizona, Attorney General Chris Mays, California Attorney General Rob Bonta, from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Attorney General Andrea Joy Campbell, and finally, Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison. Thank you, generals, for being with us today. And thank you to all of our participants who have taken the time to submit questions and stories in advance to share with the state attorneys general. We have shared all of those. And we are looking for one of our participants to join us right now.
Hello, everyone, and hello, Attorney Generals. My name is Jenny Ma. I am the Director of Civil Rights at the Public Rights Project. And my question, obviously in the work that we do, helping local governments steel themselves in the current landscape, what are some ways and strategies in which the state AGs, together and independently, are protecting the civil rights of citizens in their state borders against the regressions and the attacks that are coming from the current federal government? Thank you so much.
General Ellison, do you want to take the lead on this?
Well, we're full-time devoted to protecting the rights of all citizens in each one of our states. We started meeting with each other back in March of 2024, and we pulled apart the Project 2025. We put ourselves into committees. We took different roles. And then on January 20th, when Trump got inaugurated. Shortly thereafter, he attacked birthright citizenship. And within a very short period of time, we took him to court and we got injunctions to temporary restraining orders stopping him very quickly. Shortly after that, he tried to stop and prevent over $3 trillion of federal spending. We took him to court on that. We were ready for the impoundment issue. We were able to fight him to protect National Institute of Health money, the staffing cuts at the Department of Health, the funding cuts, and we have been just relentless at fighting them. I think we're up to about 23 cases total. I don't have a firm amount because not everybody's on every case, but we have been in the trenches, standing up for the American people as attorney generals, and we've been doing it together. This has not been a solo project. We meet, we confer, we work together, and where appropriate, we join each other to defend people in all of our states and thereby all of America. And just a week ago, not even a week ago, like late last week, one of the first cases we brought was in front of the Supreme Court. It was on an issue of a national injunction, but the issue of birthright citizenship was right there. And so I'll stop right there, let my friends take up where I left off, but we're in the fight.
I'll just chime in after Keith, and I think that point that AG Ellison made about our coalition is such an important one. I think it's really unusual, and someday I think folks are going to write at least scholarly articles about how we've worked together on these cases and so effectively. And it's going to sound strange, but number one, we like each other, and we believe in the work that we're doing, and we believe that we're more effective when we're working together. And so we have, as Keith mentioned, we meet almost every day or every other day by Zoom, interestingly enough, and to do this work. And we've been, doing a lot of winning in these cases. I don't think that we've had maybe only one or two cases where we didn't achieve a TRO or preliminary injunction. And there've been a couple where we didn't, but, I will also add just this morning, right now, I think as we speak, we are arguing a case in front of the Court of International Trade against tariffs, and California plus I think 12 other states have all sued to stop the tariffs, and we are all also doing town halls both together and individually in our states to hear from people about what they're seeing in their states in terms of incursions onto civil rights or what they're dealing with in terms of these horrific cuts and unlawful, unconstitutional cuts by the Trump administration. And so those town halls have been really, really important. And, we started here in Arizona. Keith and others joined me here in Arizona. I joined him in Minnesota and in Oregon, Dan Rayfield. Keith's Town Hall in Minnesota, there were 1,200 people who turned out on a very cold, at least for me, for this Arizona girl, very cold night to talk about their worries and concerns.
And I'll just add quickly, I raised my hand like I was back in grade school. We do like each other. We work collaboratively, and that's not easy. And I don't think that should be discounted. We're working across state lines with our various team members who also work in collaboration and incredibly hard. But I would just add that even in Massachusetts, the average person still doesn't know who their attorney general is and what are the capabilities of our office is. And so in this moment in time where people are so frustrated, maybe even angry, fearful of this federal administration, it truly is the AGs that are on the front lines. And to take it a step further, it is only the Democratic AGs that are stepping up to hold this administration accountable, to maintain the rule of law, and not to allow one individual, one president, to dismantle this whole system. So really proud to be a part of this cohort, including the folks on this Zoom, to push back and most importantly, give folks hope through our action and collective action that frankly, only in many ways involves AGs.
Yeah, I'll just add to what my colleagues have been saying. And we, as Democratic AGs, I'll stress Democratic, feel we're on the front lines, first and last line of defense when it comes to the attacks on our civil rights and the attacks more broadly on the rule of law, on the Constitution. And our role is very direct. When a action from the federal administration that is unlawful or unconstitutional hurts our states, we can meet them in court and stop them. And we've brought cases 22 times in 16 weeks. As I mentioned, prevailed preliminarily in many of those cases, most of those cases with temporary restraining orders or preliminary injunctions. And of course, the standards for those orders are taking a peek at the merits and saying we're likely to succeed on those merits. So those are good signs. It's not a good sign that we have a presidential administration that's so blatantly and brazenly, consistently breaking the law and violating the Constitution. But it is good when we can go to court to stop them, protect civil rights, uphold the rule of law and the Constitution. And when it comes to civil rights, we've covered a range, of course, birthright citizenship, the Citizenship Clause of the 14th Amendment, voting rights as well. We are standing up for in one of our cases, Title VI and other parts of the Civil Rights Act. We're standing up for as well. We get involved directly, but also as amicus when others have been harmed, their civil rights have been violated. We side with them, whether it be First Amendment viewpoint discrimination and rights of free association and free speech being violated. So unfortunately, a wide variety of civil rights are under attack, and it's incumbent upon us to stand up and push back. We've also protected members of our transgender community from attack, making sure that gender affirming care continues to be provided and pushing back against some of these unlawful orders. So we've had good luck so far, and unfortunately, we don't expect the attacks to stop. So when it comes to civil rights, constitutional rights, the rule of law, those are non-negotiable, and your Democratic attorneys general are standing up and not slowing down and only moving forward. We got a full tank of gas, a lot of energy, ready to fight each and every time.
Thank you so much, Generals. I wanted to dig in on one of the civil rights that we're concerned about, that many people are concerned about. We received some comments from registrants. And I want to direct the question to General Campbell first, and the rest of you can chime in. During his first term, the president appointed 3 of the justices on the Supreme Court, and that group of justices was essential to overruling decades of precedent protecting a woman's right to an abortion. How have you been working to protect the right to reproductive justice on this new federal landscape and within your state?
Appreciate the question and framing it as just that, a civil rights, as well as a healthcare justice issue, a racial justice issue, an economic justice issue, you name it. So this group of AGs, including some of our predecessors, were fighting on this issue before the current administration. And sadly, this president previous made a promise that he would overturn Roe, and he did just that. And so we have had to step up, and we've done it in different ways. In Massachusetts specifically, where you're looking at the tools of our office and ways in which to maximize those tools to protect not only a woman's right to choose and access to an abortion, but reproductive health care generally, access to gender affirming care, closing Black maternal health gaps or other maternal health gaps. What I appreciate about my colleagues is we see the intersectionality of this work. So we've established a reproductive justice unit here in Massachusetts that looks at these issues through a human rights lens and the intersectionality of that. We have prioritized Know Your Rights and putting out a lot of guidance on just basic information. So for example, in Massachusetts, you have a right to access an abortion. You have a right to access gender affirming care. Many folks sadly still don't know that. They don't know that the current president can't, with an executive order, wipe out access to gender affirming care, for example. So just the basic training and Know Your Rights critical. In addition to that, we are also looking at legislative solutions. Massachusetts passed the SHIELD law, which protects providers and patients who are providing this care, particularly from out-of-state folks who want to interfere. Other states have followed, but we're back in the State House to close any gaps in that law and to share those best practices with other folks across the country. We are also looking at our grants tool, all the monies we get from settlements, and saying, how can we also use those dollars to play a role here? So early on, put out a $1.5 million grant to address Black maternal health and giving it to community-based organizations, and I'll name it outside of just Boston in Massachusetts, but to our rural communities, western part of the state, using that tool, which is significant to allow us to expand access, because access was always an issue even when Roe was on the books. So how can we use our tools to continue to expand access to this basic care as a human rights issue? So we're maximizing that. And then lastly, what people know us the most for is our litigation tool. So of course, going into court to protect access to mifepristone or EMTALA, we have joined so many multi-state efforts as AGs to protect access to this critical reproductive health care, to limit the influence or the poor judgment and guidance from the federal administration here. And we're just going to have to keep stepping up, maybe at times state by state, but also with a national lens and focus, because we recognize these issues don't just affect one state, they affect all of us. And we'll keep fighting the fight on these issues going forward.
So if I could just jump in on that and tell a quick story about how my colleague Rob Bonta helped California, or helped Arizona, and us deal with our 1864 abortion ban. So we actually had one of these terrible ancient zombie bans that sprung back into effect after Dobbs, and so we were dealing with that. We ultimately here in Arizona were effective in getting it overturned. My office worked through our reproductive rights unit, which I stood up for the first time in the history of Arizona, to delay the implementation of it effectively in our courts. And then the people of Arizona ultimately overturned it at the ballot box through the initiative process. But in the meantime, Rob, I don't know if you called me or I called you, but he quickly offered to help Arizona any way California could in that period of time where women didn't have access to abortion. And one of the things that Rob offered was to try to get rapid licensing of our doctors over in California, and to try to help get women to California as a haven, as a place where they could still get care. And that was what was happening, was women were having to travel from Arizona to California in that interregnum where we had to work to try to prevent the 1864 abortion ban. So, and then same thing on MIFI. We were successful because I was the AG. I got Arizona into the Washington state case where MIFI was protected. If it had been a Republican AG, they would not have sought to protect access to mifepristone, the safest form of abortion, which is medication abortion. So I'll just say those are the ways that we're doing it on a state level. And of course, if Donald Trump tries to enact some kind of a nationwide abortion ban, you can be sure that all of the Democratic AGs will be on the front lines of fighting that.
We are so grateful that you are doing this work. General Bonta, please.
Yeah, I'll just jump in. Thank you for the kind words, AG Mays. And of course, I think exemplary of our collaboration. We all work together. We obviously care about the people in our states, and we care about any and all Americans who are being deprived of their rights and losing access to health care. And that's taken a lot of different forms. I do want to emphasize the point made by AG Campbell about the different tools that we have. We're best known for going into court and using our litigation tool. And, when the Trump administration takes steps to weaponize the Comstock Act or try to undermine access to mifepristone, whatever it may be, and we're prepared. We've looked at Project 2025, the things that they've said on the campaign trail, and we'll be ready to use that tool. But I want to emphasize the legislative tool as well, and the steps we can take in our own states. In California, we have a robust, I'll call it a robust direct democracy system where we have propositions that go directly to the voters, and Californians after Dobbs enshrined the constitutional right to abortion and contraception in our state constitution, creating an even stronger protection than our statutes already provided. We have laws around restricting access to information and keeping private information about reproductive research or web searches or medical information. We've made it clear that you can't criminalize pregnancy loss in California, and that was not a theoretical and intellectual issue. It was being weaponized by some district attorneys in some counties in California. And we've also created a sanctuary here in California where providers and patients can provide and seek abortion care as appropriate if it's being deprived in their state. So a lot of tools in the toolbox that we can use, and we will use and deploy each of them as appropriate. But I think it provides a sense of hope and optimism that there are multiple ways to solve the challenges that we're seeing, and some of these blue states are really hard at work in getting the job done.
If I could just
Oh,
add
go ahead.
oh, sorry. I just
No,
gonna
go ahead.
add a quick point. One, we are engaging with the community, with the public. That's another tool that we're employing very aggressively. Like Chris, and I think everybody has said, we've had a number of meetings and we want to continue to do that. We're glad to be here with the American Constitution Society because we know you guys are nothing but serious about the Constitution. We're grateful for that. And we're not an exclusive group. In fact, we often mention, wouldn't it be great if some Republicans joined us? We don't lock them out. We'd be happy if they joined us. So far, we haven't had any takers, but when they do, if they want to help us defend the Constitution, they're welcome.
That's an excellent point. And I just wanted to invite one of our participants to share her story with you. Leslie, you can go ahead and unmute.
Hi all. Oh my God, you're giving me so much hope. I'm in Hartford, Connecticut, and our Attorney General Tong has been very outspoken. I'm hoping he's joining you. I already just tagged him on Facebook. So, and he has done, some sessions where he's told us, the big fear living in Hartford, a city of immigrants, a poor city, a wonderful city, but filled with fear, as I'm sure you're seeing in some of your cities. And I really, in spite of, all the legal matters, I think our biggest demon is the fear, fear that people have to speak out. Certainly if they're immigrants or undocumented, very fearful. But even a lot of people are just so afraid to speak out. So I think that and our fake news are some of our biggest demons. And I know when Trump was running, I had people in their 80s saying, well, those unlawful people are going to rob me, and what it's been like to get all that fake news out where people have really in a lot of fear. And we have had some instances with ICE here, but I think it's really more the fear and really getting the good news out of everything that you guys are doing. So I'm just so grateful. I'm going to the psychics and mediums, but now you're giving me some hope. So maybe I'll come back to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Leslie. And this brings up a good question. General Bonta, can you talk a little bit about how you have been working to protect immigrants in California and fight federal overreach on immigration enforcement?
Absolutely. And I do want to start with an acknowledgement of the fear, the anxiety, the concern, the worry. I know that is prevalent throughout our communities. Unfortunately, it's I think, unfortunately, also part of the plan. This sort of chaos and fear and bullying approach is something that the Trump administration really cultivates and has created. And We want to provide the opposite. We want to provide folks knowledge of their rights and knowledge that they belong and are welcome in our states and in our nation. Of course, a nation of immigrants. I think it's important that we tell our own personal stories, as well as some of my fellow AGs have, talking about how they are birthright citizens themselves, AG Tong and AG Raul. And, you know, my own story, being born in another country. My mom's an immigrant from the Philippines. My parents brought me here to this country because they wanted freedom and democracy for me, and the rule of law, and due process and human rights. And those are all being taken away in the Philippines by a dictator rising to power. And martial law was declared exactly a year from the date of my birth, ending democracy as it was known. And so California has the most immigrants of any state. We're the largest state, so not a surprise. But we know that we thrive because of our immigrants, and we want to make sure that our immigrant communities know their rights. And so we spent a lot of time early on sharing, as Inauguration Day approached, the rights that immigrants had. And we've also taken action when there have been attacks that are unlawful on our immigrant communities, including what was mentioned earlier, the day one, January 20th, inaugural day, attack on the right of birthright citizenship. And something that we feel very strongly about. We got a strong case on this. We've won at every level so far, defending that citizenship clause in the 14th Amendment, that if you're born on American soil, you're a U.S. citizen, period, full stop, end of story. And we recently had a U.S. Supreme Court argument on the broader issue of national injunctions and nationwide injunctions. And we think this is a case where a nationwide injunction is absolutely appropriate. Constitutional rights belong to everyone in this country, not just to those in the blue states where their AGs decided to fight for their constitutional rights, but not for those in red states where the AGs were sitting on their hands, letting their people be deprived of their constitutional rights. We've also seen some actions from the Trump administration where they're trying to coerce states into doing their job for them, their job, the job that they have of lawful immigration enforcement, if that's how they choose to prioritize their resources. And they're threatening to withhold U.S. Department of Transportation funding and also Homeland Security funding to the tune of billions of dollars in California and across the country if our states don't do their job for them in terms of immigration enforcement. This is an issue that's been tried before. In Trump 1.0, we have some really good Ninth Circuit precedent here in California, where our law that says that SB 54 in California that says we're going to focus our valuable and limited law enforcement resources on criminal law enforcement and on going after murderers and rapists and robbers instead of focusing on civil immigration enforcement, that law is completely lawful, consistent with our 10th Amendment rights as states, our states' rights. And so we are pushing back, and we brought a lawsuit challenging that coercive action by the Trump administration to try to enlist and impress California and other states across the country into doing their immigration enforcement job for them. We've also been involved in a lot of areas as Democratic AGs, as amicus, where we don't necessarily specifically have standing, but we care deeply about the issue, whether it be on issues of asylum or temporary protected status. Our program supporting our refugees, we've been involved. And so we try to lift our voices, whether it be in direct litigation or through as friends of the court when others are being harmed, to make sure that our immigrant communities continue to know that we support them, their rights, and we'll continue to go to bat and fight for states and nations where our immigrant communities belong, are welcome, and their rights are honored.
AG Campbell. Oh,
sorry,
AG
go ahead.
Mays, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to add, I think that a number of us, including Arizona, to add to what Rob just said, number of us, including Arizona, I know California did as well, have provided guidance to our school districts around what they have to do or don't have to do if ICE comes to the school. It's an unthinkable thing for a lot of these principals and school superintendents to have to deal with, but they are worried about that. And I believe it's happened in one or two places. And so we did provide that guidance to our schools and said, if ICE comes to, so because you think about it, what is a secretary or administrative assistant supposed to do? What is a school bus driver supposed to do if ICE tries to take a child off the bus or out of the school? And we, in Arizona and most states, all children have the right to an education, and we want to educate all children. That lifts all of us up. And so we put out guidance saying, okay, if ICE comes to the door, they must come with a judicial warrant, not just an administrative warrant. So those kinds of things that were practical guidance that we're trying to provide to, especially to schools, as they navigate this new world.
And I would just add, just echoing all of my colleagues, one, I feel blessed to work with colleagues that see the humanity in folks, including our immigrants, which I think is of the utmost importance right now, utmost importance in pushing back on this narrative that suggests that all immigrants are somehow criminals. And so we have a powerful platform to say otherwise. And if they are perpetuating crime in our communities, many of our offices have criminal jurisdiction. We hold them accountable like anybody. And that may lead to deportation or incarceration. So if we're able to do public safety without causing fear, we have the same expectation for our federal government. And so in addition to protecting birthright and unborn and newborn babies in this immigration context, in guidance to our school districts, we had to expand that to our healthcare institutions, other also industries, so they knew what to do to protect people's privacy, their information, et cetera. But two other things I think are worth lifting up is we're protecting due process. We actually had a student here in Massachusetts who was here lawfully, who was abducted off the street by 6 plainclothes individuals who did not identify themselves, took her off the street. She was a tough student, took her off the street, Ramesa is her name, took all of her stuff, handcuffed her, put her in an unmarked vehicle and took her away. And for 24 hours with our involvement with her lawyers and so many others, we could not figure out where she was. So blatant violation of due process. And she was detained for months and only recently was released. So we're in court fighting for just due process, which I think is important, recognizing the hardship and the trauma that people are experiencing. So we will do it with a sense of urgency like we did in Rumesa's case and so many others, and pushing the Supreme Court to do even more, not just say you're for due process, but when you order, for example, the president to bring someone back, that you provide them with maybe a few more instructions on when and how to do that. So there's greater accountability from this administration to the courts. And then I said 2 more points. The other is getting more lawyers to actually get involved here. We have been supporting a lot of immigration lawyers who are volunteering their time or just showing up in rapid response to help folks who are experiencing some unlawful action by ICE or the federal administration. Can't stress enough how important that is. Many of our offices cannot personally represent folks who have had some horrific experience with ICE. We need lawyers in this moment in time to step up and to support our efforts, to bring more human capital to these cases, a rapid response to ensure people get basic due process in real time. And then lastly, ICE. And in Massachusetts, and I think other states, we're seeing this, including in Connecticut. They are not just patrolling cities or gateway communities, as we call them here in Massachusetts. They're in the suburbs, they're everywhere. And it's not just ICE officials, they're using other federal agencies to be patrolling our communities. And so now we're actually going out to educate folks on what they should expect when ICE shows up, because the federal government has such significant power in this space, and it's almost stacked against us. But it's not off the table for us to consider how we hold ICE accountable when they do things that are so egregious or horrific. It's hard to do in that, obviously they have qualified immunity, they have the federal laws, the Constitution that give them significant power when it comes to immigration enforcement. But what we're seeing is not a promotion of public safety. It's actually perpetuating fear and creating fear in all of our communities. So it's not off the table for us to also think about how we hold ICE accountable, but it must be known that it's very difficult for AGs to do that, given the federal authority in this space. But we're not closing our eyes to the reality that people are living in real fear right now in our communities because of the aggressive stance and posture of ICE right now. And we take that seriously and are exploring all of our tools and ways in which to hold folks accountable as they promote fear instead of public safety.
Thank you so much for that. We actually have another story from one of our participants and a question. Jean, I welcome you to turn on your camera and unmute yourself.
Sure.
Welcome.
Thank you. First, I just want to thank ACS for putting on this panel. It's been wonderful to hear all the attorneys general, and just express some appreciation to the work that you all are doing. Thank you so much for doing everything and to join us today. So my name is Eugene Soa. I am currently an attorney, at least until June 10th, with the U.S. Department of Education's Office for Civil Rights. I've been there roughly about 10 years. The office is responsible for enforcing federal civil rights statutes that protect individuals from discrimination based on race, national origin, color, disability, age, sex. Unfortunately, our office was deemed not essential, essentially, by the Trump administration and the DOJ actions, and 7 out of the 12 enforcement offices around the country were closed, including the Chicago office where I was currently an attorney. It seems that these actions are, obviously arbitrary. Our offices have been kind of overwhelmed for the last 10 years since I've been there. Every year it seems to get more and more cases. I wanted to ask, what is the current state of any litigation efforts that the attorneys general have that are combating or fighting these administration actions? And I guess I was curious about what are some of the unique challenges facing the attorneys general in that litigation, because these are more like HR actions. I think the last part of this would just be, what would the attorneys general like to see from ACS members? How can they get involved or help in these efforts? Thank you.
So I think I'm going to take that one first. And Jean, thanks for being with us, and thanks for all of your service. And
course,
it
thank you.
is so incredibly valued. And we are going to fight for you and for every other member of the civil rights section of the Department of Education. We have filed that lawsuit. We did get a TRO on the COVID grants portion of our lawsuits. We are still in litigation on the RIFs portion of it. So it's my understanding that the defendants, meaning the government, the federal government, have to file their answer to our complaint in mid-June. So we're actively fighting it. Obviously, we'd like to get an injunction in that case to prevent these rifts from happening. I just actually this weekend had the opportunity to meet with one of the or ran into one of your former top deputies, who I think left in January, in your division, and she mentioned the terrible impacts that these rifts and firings are already having, which is it's causing caseloads to rise to totally untenable levels. Not to mention the fact that you are essential workers in every way. And so that's kind of where that's where it stands procedurally. The AGs, the Democratic AGs, have filed that lawsuit. We think the Department of Education is incredibly important. We think all of these agencies are incredibly important. And what the Trump administration is trying to do is unlawful. It violates the separation of powers. It violates the APA. And they are essentially trying to decimate and destroy the entire federal government. And so that's why we are suing them every time they try to do this.
Thank you, Chris. This is Keith. You know, Gina, let me put it in a little bit of context. So they're attacking the Department of Education, they're attacking Head Start, they're attacking AmeriCorps, they're attacking PBS and NPR. They seem to be attacking every avenue through which Americans get information. They're attacking the libraries and museums. And so if they want to foreclose every door by which an American can get knowledge about their world, so that they can say, if you have an opinion, we'll tell you what it is. And this is a hallmark of dictators. This is not what happens in free societies. So, you know, the larger context to what we're doing and you're doing, Gene, is to protect our fundamental democracy. And I think what could be more fundamental to democracy than public education? That's where you get the ability to even make a choice by and a discerning choice. So, Gene, you asked the question, what can ACS people do? Let me tell you, well, there's a lot you can do. People like yourself, quite honestly, can help us understand what's going on from the inside. Number two, if you're able to do amicus briefs, that's great. Number three, relentlessly hold meetings like this one, and in every law school, you know, undergraduate, help the people understand what's going on and beat back this this idea that somehow we can't win or we're not going to win. We are going to win. We're winning. And so this demoralization, you know, once they make you think you can't win, then you've lost. And so it's important for you all, for ACS to do that. I think that this is the moment that ACS was made for. So that's it. That's what I got.
I love Keith. That's what I got. I'm just going to add to what Keith said, because AmeriCorps, I was with, I think, every librarian from every municipality in Massachusetts yesterday at their association, stressing the collective work of all of these AGs and protecting our libraries, and now not allowing the Trump administration to defund these public institutions that are critical, especially for a democratic society, and not allow them to ban books, all the things they're attempting to do. But to that question, in addition to more lawyers stepping up in their respective states, folks getting to know their AGs and spreading the word around, you know, hello, my friend in this state, do you know who your attorney general is? And if it's not a Democratic attorney general, you might want to ask some tough questions and reminding folks this is when elections matter, right? Who's in these positions determining how ICE, for example, will show up, or they want to defund libraries or civil rights agencies or fire employees like Gene or others who are doing meaningful work. This is when voting and who's in these positions of power also matter. So it's a reminder to just be civically engaged with us, but also personally civically engaged. And then lastly, I can't stress the power of even sharing stories. I was telling every librarian, and there were hundreds there yesterday at this association meeting that covered 2 days, to go back into their communities, including some parts of our state that they say are red, and to share with folks what's at stake and to use examples that are personal to them. Like, what would it mean if a community or municipality lost their library? Not just access to technology information or being able to get on the web for a job search. Some of these places provide children's services and children library services that turn into daycare opportunities for folks in so many different ways. The foundation and a pillar of our democratic society. So just the importance of sharing what's at stake. We're talking about the rule of law and what that means. The 14th Amendment and not allowing a president to dismantle the 14th or any other amendment that, you know, pick the one you like. But just really sharing these stories to get people mobilized is really important. We'll do our part, but I think folks need to also wake up in many ways, which of course this convening allows us to do, so they can get what's at stake and join our efforts if they can, because we're here to support and work in collaboration.
And maybe I'll just add on the actual, on both questions, on the issue of dismantling the federal government, different departments and agencies, including Department of Education, Civil Rights Enforcement. The Trump administration, and Trump has been a repeat offender when it comes to that same move to that unlawful, unconstitutional effort to control the power of the purse, something that does not belong to the executive branch, does not belong to the president. It belongs to Congress. Congress has the power of the purse. Congress has the authority to appropriate and to spend, and Trump desperately and deeply wants that power and tries to exercise it and has done it time and time again in the form of trying to dismantle and destroy different departments and agencies throughout the federal government. He has shown a contempt for the hardworking public servants who are federal employees who make our government work. And we are a long, long way away from waste, fraud, and abuse. This is cutting core, central, essential, critical services that protect people's rights and give them health and housing and food and childcare and college and public safety and emergency relief. And so the Trump administration has done this time and time again, and we've had great success on our arguments around the separation of powers and Article 1 congressional authority versus Article 2 executive authority, as well as the Administrative Procedures Act. So we like our chances going forward in terms of challenging this similar type of conduct. I think there is so much that can be done. The most important thing is do something. It's the Michelle Obama quote that's so appropriate right now. Everyone can do something. We ought not feel hopeless because we are not helpless. We all can do something. And maybe it's telling us what's happening on the ground, how someone is being mistreated, or an action from the federal administration is creating harm, and sharing that with us. And we often hear what's happening as it bubbles up organically from the folks on the front lines, and then we start assessing and reviewing and determining if we have an action, and then going to court ultimately. But it always starts with hearing the pain and the harm that's being visited by the Trump administration on the ground. So that sort of that information loop is really important. Folks can sue on their own when they're harmed. They can file amicus briefs if they believe in a case, but they don't have standing. For folks who are attorneys representing a immigrant in a removal proceeding can be outcome determinative. If you have an attorney and an immigrant is aware of his or her rights under the law, that could mean the difference between being able to be lawfully present or be wrongfully deported. And then, of course, as we move towards our elections, we have a chance to change the balance of power in Washington. It's absolutely critical that we do. We have a lot of different tools and levers of influence, and the AGs have a very prominent one right now. But there are more that are potentially available if the people speak up and speak out, show out, and make their voices heard about what they want in their representatives.
We have one last participant question. We have just enough time. So Sharon, feel free to unmute.
Hi there. Good afternoon, Attorneys General, and thank you so much for being on this panel and for all of your efforts protecting the rule of law. My name is Sharon Cruz. I'm a Filipino American in Indianapolis, Indiana. I was a data privacy litigator until the last couple of months when I pivoted my practice to learn immigration law. I also was an assistant Illinois Attorney General under AGs Madigan and Raul, and I hope very much to join your ranks when I replaced Indiana Attorney General Todd Rokita in 2028. So aside from running from office, how can concerned citizens in majority red states like Indiana hold our AGs accountable?
Well, so thank you for running. I mean, putting your name on a lawn sign is an act of faith, to be sure. And I think that what we got to always keep in mind that the reason that the First Amendment is first is because it's maybe the one that guarantees all the rest of our rights. Your right to assembly, your right to address grievances, your right to speak out, your right to worship as you choose, the right to the press, freedom of the press. These are the rights we've really got to talk about. And right now, I think we got to go back to first principles. Why do we have the rule of law? Why do we have due process of law? Are you for it, Mr. Attorney or Madam Attorney General? Do you believe in those core principles? Or do you only believe in them for people who you like and you don't like them for others? These are the questions we've got to put in front of people. Now, again, I think that we need to relentlessly engage community. I think we need to have community meetings, every church, every mosque, every synagogue, every high school. We've got to engage people because one thing is the anxiety goes down when you're in community with people doing things with them. Number two, your information goes up because you hear all these arguments that people are making and you get a little smarter. Number three, you feel better because you see that things are going on and that people are not just taking it on the chin. And that there are people who feel like you feel. I would just say keep the door open. Welcome anybody in who cares about the rule of law. We can sort out partisan stuff later, but for right now, let's save our democracy. And I think everybody has a responsibility in that. So those are a few things they can do, but thank you for running.
Yeah, I would just add to that. Yeah, thank you for running. Thank you for doing that. I would add to that, point out when Todd Rokita doesn't do town halls, which I guarantee you he's not doing town halls. Neither are the Republican members of Congress who ought to be ashamed of these Medicaid cuts that they're proposing and ought to be ashamed of the fact that they're not the ones standing up for their own prerogatives and the separation of powers. It's the Democratic AGs who are standing up for the rule of law and standing up for the Constitution and standing up for Congress's power of the purse, as Rob Bonta pointed out. These Republican AGs in more and more instances, I think, are going to be the ones who are going to have to answer for why they didn't join our cases. You look at the NIH case that we filed. Well, guess what? That judge and that one only covered our states because we filed the cases, and so it was the Republican states and Todd Rokita and Indiana that lost out. Guess what? Indiana universities are getting pummeled as a result, hammered. Senator Katie Britt, I think from Alabama, was the one who said, oh, but the University of Alabama is the economic engine of Alabama. Well, it probably is. But guess what, Katie Britt, Senator Katie Britt, your AG didn't participate in our cases. And so those states or those people are going to be harmed. And so pointing all that out and calling them out for it is really important. And the people of those states have a right to have an AG who will protect them.
I think that's a great place for us to end. We are short on time. We could go on forever, but the attorneys general have very busy schedules. I am so grateful to each of you for taking time out of your day to join us and answer questions from the amazing folks in the ACS network. Thank you to everyone who submitted questions in advance and in the Q&A. I am so sorry we were not able to get to everyone's excellent questions. If you are not already, we encourage you to find your community and become a member of ACS. We also hope that you will join us in June for the 2025 ACS National Convention Series, a 4-week virtual programming event that will highlight how states are responding to pressing issues around immigration, democracy and voting, economic and racial justice, and transgender rights. Thank you for your time. I hope you have a good day.